So, firstly, hello and welcome, and thanks for joining our first of our webinar series. And this is all devoted to developing our retrofit talent pipeline in order to ensure that we decarbonise the homes across South London that we need. Just to say, we'll be recording this webinar and it will be an available resource on our retrofitskills.org site. This is building on our one-stop shop site for trades and practitioners looking to find out more about retrofit and skills and jobs that are available across South London. The reason we've developed this is through some research we conducted over the last year. We identified that we needed to deliver a number of interventions to decarbonise the over 635,000 properties we have in South London. And we've estimated that this will require at least 66,000 person years. And the occupations required to do this include building envelopers, so insulation installers, roofers, scaffolders, plumbers, electricians, planners, project managers, amongst other things, not to mention community engagement officers and ecologists. And so the scale of the challenge but opportunity is not insignificant, and we recognise that. So through funding we secured through Greater South East Net Zero Hub and the Department for Energy Security Net Zero, we've been delivering skills and training pilots, knowledge building events, and a webinar series, as well as developing out our website. But this is so we can start to make a real impact on the volumes that we need to decarbonise the homes that we've got across South London. This webinar will become part of our portfolio, and this is all about helping to build the knowledge, inspire the new talent pipeline, and make sure that we have enough talent coming through to develop at the scale that we require over the next 10 years. So I'd like to welcome Matt from Greenworkx, and he's here to talk about skills and vacancy gaps and some of their innovative work and how they're really making an impact, not just in London or South London, but across the country on some of the work they do. So I'll hand over to you, Matt, and thanks.
Introduction, understanding the nature of the challenge, the nature and scale of the challenge, the specific barriers associated with this, and the solutions, strategies, and collaboration opportunities. So as I said, the inevitable beginning of this problem is the global climate crisis, which is getting worse. And certainly 2023 being a year on record, and possibly 2024 is to be a warmer year still. And this is the inevitable context of why decarbonisation and insulation is going to be a factor, and retrofit is a major solution to all of this, and it carries other benefits beyond helping us combat climate and reduce the pressure on our energy systems and overarching objectives. The reasons to be optimistic is that globally we're spending trillions of dollars on low carbon technologies, renewable energy, electrified transport, electrified heat, clean industries, cleaner shipping, and that sets a rise to about $6 trillion by the year 2030. So we are moving at some pace. This is an exponential growth curve, but we need to go further still. And the relevant context is that the pandemic meant that a number of people dropped out of the labour market. So we have record vacancies in most of the developed world. And in not having enough workers, we're actually unable to move forward with some of these infrastructure changes that we're hoping to make. So that's at the national level of building power stations or shoring offshore wind, or indeed at the hyper-local level, where we're looking to insulate buildings or install pumps or electrify transportations. And of course, the resulting issue is that we have this green skills images, and that can be defined as both not having enough people overall, and that's true in particular times and places, and not having enough people in times and places that we need them, but also not having enough skills of the right feature when we need to call on, and that can be anything from building insulation, which we're going to major on today, but also actually a shortage of electricians generally and construction workers. And so that is the challenge that we're trying to deal with, and the solution to it, of course, is how do you find new entrants into these industries, but also how do you help upskill and retain existing workers in industries, potentially improving their pay and conditions and keeping them working as long as they possibly can in relevant sectors. So double clicking then on retrofit and where retrofit fits in this particular narrative. So the majority of UK residential buildings that will be around at a time that the countries legally binding targets are due to be met are already here today and will remain for the next 26 years. And so the long and the short of it is that we can't reach net zero without decarbonising the built environment as we currently have it. And that's because the majority of our energy use in the UK and the emissions of carbon dioxide are coming from our homes. So a third of all the domestic energy use in the UK is coming from homes at about 20% of all carbon emissions. And so to hit net zero, we need to be decarbonising 27 million properties in the next 26 years, so about 1 million properties per year. And specifically, what does this mean? It means taking out fossil fuel heating systems and replacing them with low carbon electric heating systems. It means putting solar panels on roofs. It means reducing the need to use lots of energy by insulating buildings better and hopefully improving the fabric of those buildings as we go as well. So there's quite a lot of interventions that need to be staged, starting from very light interventions like double glazing and smart metering and just changing the way we use our homes, through to much more involved whole house interventions that are obviously hard to do practically and physically, but also are quite invasive, which means you have to go and talk to people, knock on the door and say, can I talk to you about the kinds of things that might be possible in relation to your home especially. And to do this, the estimate is that UK between now and 2030 needs something like 250 to 500,000 new professions and trades. So this is everything from external wall insulation technicians, plumbers, heat pump installers, electricians, all the way through to kind of domestic energy assessors, retrofit coordinators, project managers, and so on. So the nature of the roles that Polly was describing. And importantly, we also need to upskill the existing workforce. So we can't get by with just getting new entrants in. We also can't get by with just relying on the status quo of the workforce as we have it. So we need to be able to do both. And we need to be able to do it in a fast-moving, context-changing environment with new technologies emerging all the time, and a very high premium on people who can speak to consumers or residents and try and affect some behaviour change and drive their demand for retrofit. And to give you a sense of what these roles look like, so this is an image from the Climate Change Committee and the sixth carbon budget. And you can see that it breaks down by different roles, and that we get a peak demand sometime towards the end of this decade, so 2030. And then actually that demand remains very high. It rises a little bit further, and then it rises, and then it remains very high after that, because we need to maintain some of this infrastructure as we venture into the latter half of the century. So the unique aspects of this challenge are that it is the speed and the scale of it. So 1 million homes a year is an enormous number. And as a bit of context, I think the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund for the coming 3 years is maybe 150,000 homes over a 3-year period. So it's a massive jump in the order of magnitude of that change. It has a compounding impact, which means that for every year that we're behind our targets, we need to increase the rate of completion as we venture into the future. So we need to do more and more in a shorter space of time, and then we need more workers and more supply chain. Demographically, the workforce that we currently have is not getting any younger. So the median age of a gas-safe boiler engineer is something like 55. So again, if this is a sort of 25-year period, we're going to have quite a few people leaving the labour market due to aging and retirement. And the regulation is fast-paced and changing all the time. So the demands of what PAS 2035, first introduced in 2019, requires, as of a couple of months from now, versus what it required a few years back, is moving, and therefore industry needs to stay on top of those latest updates from regulators, health and safety provisions, and of course any manufacturer updates on new technologies like heat pumps and charging. And a bunch of the market for this installation is businesses that employ 50 people or fewer. So it's a pretty fragmented space with small companies that aren't necessarily across this type of information and able to use it readily and easily. And so actually, the more that we can do to kind of harness them, communicate with them, and bring them into the conversation, the better for us all. And of course, you have quite a lot of regional disparity, so that where the work and demand for this kind of retrofit change is not always translating to where the workers are. And I particularly think about rural areas of the country where you will eventually need to take certain types of infrastructure change, but actually population density is very low and transport links are very weak. This might not apply specifically to a lot of South London. However, at the same time, you might have a significant sector skill shortage in certain parts of this transition in the region. And so to unpack some of the barriers that stand in the way of us being able to build this workforce, the first challenge is awareness. So not many people out there know what this challenge and opportunity is. They've never heard the word retrofit. They don't make the connection between, if they have, retrofit and actually decarbonisation, improving living standards, lowering bills for residents, and so on. So there is a massive awareness gap at the resident and consumer end, at the installer and business end, less so, but certainly at the kind of job seeker and job candidate end, awareness is very low. If there is awareness, there is inevitably a question about, well, why should I do this job over my current job or another career that I could pursue that is more familiar to me? So we're asking people to make very rational choices about where we want them to go, the conditions of that work. They might have misconceptions about what the nature of the work is, how much they might get paid, whether it's formal or informal, the level of dust and dirt involved in it, and so on. So they might be a bit suspicious as to whether these are good jobs. And of course, if you can take them so far along this chain, the next question is, well, can I do this work? What do I need by way of qualifications? What do I need to know? How do I qualify if I am interested? And importantly, how can I qualify without having to pay through the nose for that qualification? And that's, again, a very important consideration for trying to get people engaged in this as potential workers. And so we need to find ways of both connecting their pre-existing skills to this and showing them what the different pathways and journeys are, as well as creating different upskilling and training courses, be that boot camp style courses or relevant kind of apprenticeship courses. And of course, importantly, availability, which I think is a major kind of factor when you consider the fact that these markets are made up of mostly smaller employers. So small to mid-sized businesses, in our experience, are often not advertising their roles in the obvious places, or if they are, not very visibly. And so sometimes I've certainly had conversations at the job centre level where people are just not sure where these jobs are and where they're coming from. And I think a lot of that is because the availability is not signalled as well as in some more established industries. And the kind of things that might help us get closer to having this workforce. So one is campaigns and advice. So how do we position this opportunity in the right times and spaces where the people we want to hire, and dare I say, certainly for retrofit, that population is an incredibly diverse, eligible population. What conversation about the roles and getting them into it. So how do we position campaigns and advice around the routes and qualifications that they can take in the right places? We need to be super clear about the pay, benefit, and conditions. Although there are lots of reasons why someone should get into a climate green job generally and a retrofit job specifically, pay, conditions, and benefits are very natural considerations that people have at the top of mind. So the extent to which we can be transparent about that and what that opportunity presents, the better. And that could be part of how our marketing and advertising campaign shape up. And importantly, to emphasize this question of kind of career progression, so that this isn't just a job that's here as some kind of climate or temporary fad or whatever, that there is some real scope for progression within and between different routes, whereby you might actually start as an installer, technician, and get into more project management work of rotation across different areas and so on. So giving people a sense of what that career looks like for different qualifications they can bring together and how they go about them. And of course, how to keep learning continuously, connecting to that point about the fact that regulation is changing and moving all the time. And ideally, you would have one or more dedicated talent portals where people can trust the process of, well, if they give some credentials away of who they are and what they're looking for, they will get some kind of benefit in a clarified journey, and in primary colours, being able to understand the opportunity might be. And I should say this is the kind of the full spectrum of the solution that we are trying to build, because we understand that at the candidate end, which is the main constraint around this, there is so much to be done around removing the reason why people can't access these jobs. So it's on us to kind of eliminate those frictions to be a partnership collaborators like us. And maybe just to kind of end on a note around what kinds of collaboration opportunities there might be within the partnership, and we would certainly be excited about any and all of these. So on the recruitment side, how do we engage in local recruitment campaigns that allow us to drive up the social value benefits of any retrofit programs, and of course diversity by engaging local talent, and that £17 billion opportunity that I'm posted in the plan should be an opportunity that is captured within the SRP region, and that could happen through local recruitment campaigns. Of course, the region has some significant colleges and training providers, and we need to think about how we can upskill people from zero to competent in a shorter space of time. And although that's not always possible, it's an important factor to consider if we are going to be connecting to local recruitment and engagement. Employers, small and big, we need to see how we can build tailored recruitment campaigns that scale for them. So essentially, can't be too prohibitive for those employers in cost. We need to deliver the right kinds of talent in the right places for them, so they can continue installing, continue getting paid for those installations, and delivering value and benefit for residents. So there's a big consideration around how you can connect recruitment to the real employer pains around hiring and talent workforce management. And ultimately, the question about how you keep the ongoing learning going, because however long or short the retrofit endeavour in South London is today, actually this is a 25-year plus programme overall. So we need to be able to keep the skills base refreshed in various things like the ones I mentioned, be that products the manufacturers are delivering, everything from insulation through to charge point technologies, health and safety, different standards, regulation coming out of government, and of course customer service as well, because so much of this is about people and behaviour change and trying to get upstream and persuade people that making a change is an important consideration.
Thanks, Matt. And it's really good to hear what you're saying. Some of it we know, some of it it's quite new to us, and or in a different slice of the pie, if you like, particularly the national context. I wondered, could you kind of tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that the employers that you're working with, because obviously you've got quite a unique product, so happy for you to build out and tell us a little bit about what you do as Greenworkx, but also kind of what are the significant challenges that the employers that you're recruiting for are facing?
Yeah, I think maybe kind of reframing the question slightly, the things that employers will working with value is how quickly they can fill job vacancies that they have, because the longer they have those vacancies, the more constraints and challenges and limits there are on how many projects they're completing, and that then impacts their ability to get paid and subsequently rates than other people. So time to fill roles is a major factor. The other one is costs to fill, which is that because of the tightness of the labour market that I described, driven partly by the pandemic experience, the shortage of skills and so on, there's the scarcity of talent. So you might have a job advert that's out for 2 months, 3 months. You will have spent money on either a jobs board or a specialist recruiter, and you might still land with not the right person and no person at all. So the cost of that whole exercise is a major factor too. And then related at the other end, there's a question of like loyalty and retention. So are you able to hold on to any workers that you've been able to secure? And so across those kind of three factors, it really underlines for us the need to build a mid to longer term kind of perspective on talent that kind of says we need to be taking people, candidates on the journey of understanding these roles and different routes they might take, building their enthusiasm, awareness and interest, and then connecting it with the right employers that they will stay with, and being able to do that at a significant scale so that the cost of hiring translated to employers can ultimately be affordable for relatively small, fast growing And so those are the major kind of features that we find. But the general kind of context is, yeah, have more work that I can fulfill, need more workers. I'm trying to find a skilled and experienced person at a given kind of wage, and those things just don't quite triangulate. So when we meet employers, it's the opportunity to break down some of their maybe preconceptions of how qualified a person needs to be on day one, and therefore what can be done on the job post employment, and also how they go about searching for talent and where they advertise. So we take a lot of that.
Thanks. And I just want to open up any questions. Do anyone have any questions for Matt while we have his expertise knowledge, particularly around kind of the recruitment and opportunities within retrofit? And until we see the hands go up, I think I will ask another question. So in terms of kind of skills deficits for the applicants that you see coming through, what skills are your employers requesting and that you're not managing to always fulfill, or the candidates aren't managing to fulfill the most sort of common?
Yeah, so maybe if I kind of break down the answer into two. So one is like things that are generalizable across all different set roles, and then things that are more specific. So things that are generalizable are actually that piece about knowing some of the more cutting edge features of the technologies, and more importantly, knowing how to deal with different types of resident or customer. Those are things that kind of need to happen across the board. And they're sometimes lacking, even if you have an extremely technically gifted, qualified person. Actually, their time, say, spent on boilers has been relatively low-key in repairing and replacing boilers, maybe not doing so much advocacy around new solutions or talking to customers about their needs. And therefore, that kind of cross-cutting, customer-facing skill set is one that needs a boost overall. I think what we find then is if I kind of remind of the presentation, when I have a kind of rainbow chart of different trades and qualifications needed, essentially for each of those different roles, the qualification period from 0 to 1 varies depending on the role. And so if an employer is saying, I need this type of technical skill, let's call it retrofit assessor, that is a much shorter route for someone that's never been in retrofit compared to I need a solar electrician or a heat pump installer. And therefore your ability to kind of fix things in the short term, assuming that you can't find an available supply of part qualified or even fully qualified people, then it's very, very difficult. And therefore you need to kind of be going constantly upstream and thinking about where can you get people to switch from either prior vocational courses or other industries that will allow you to convert them with the least possible effort. And so, because really, my point is, if we need, let's say, hypothetically, 80,000 electricians over the next 3 years as a country, if it takes 3 to 5 years to train an electrician, then you can do the maths backwards and figure out how many years it's actually going to take us to deliver that number of people without a very kind of focused effort. And that's true regionally in South London as much as it is true nationally. So I think that's the time that none of us have, which is that we kind of know what sort of milestones we need to hit. What we need to factor in is how long is the time to get online of these new entrants of workforce or upskilling existing workers, and how long or short is that time frame depending on what capital is available. So to summarize, cross-cutting issues are softer skills, customer service skills, project management. But as you go deeper into some of the roles, the technical know-how, the formal qualifications are harder to come by or easier, depending on what the role is.
Thanks, Matt. And I think sort of that kind of summarizes the scale of some of the challenge and the broad nature of this. Ricardo had a question that he's now put in the chat. He did have his hand up, so I'll start with him and then I'll go back to Georgina's. It says, what are retrofit employers looking for from colleges and schools in terms of qualifications, experience, in order to speed up the time and cost of recruitment? And obviously you've just touched on that, but is there anything else you think the schools and colleges could be doing?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I think it's worth thinking about, okay, obviously there are the specific courses that relate to a PAS regulated retrofit project. So it's the level 3 domestic energy assessor course, followed by the ECMK or ELMHER sort of one-day certification to turn you into a retrofit assessor. And you've got the kind of different level 5 retrofit coordinator calls and so on. So beyond the specific qualifications that could be delivered, and then you have newly qualified, if you like, retrofit workforce coming out of colleges. That's number one. That's very useful. I think the other piece is then thinking about, well, how are you seeding retrofit basics across other relevant courses like construction multi-skills or bricklaying or dry lining, because those things do pervade into this, and just be using that as part of kind of career shaping and thinking across the college. And I think ultimately, it's one of the things that's very hard to synchronize is this employer demand, which is often quite immediate. I need these people in yesterday, versus actually a college might take some time to train those people and understanding how many people and what kind of roles and so on. So that dynamic does not tend to work very well generally. And so I think some specific opportunities to kind of help people with placements and stuff between colleges and employers would go quite a long way, because we find that employers often start with a kind of reluctance to even think about somebody that, I suppose, in another world you'd be calling a trainee. So even if they were recently qualified, it'd still be, this is not a site competent person. However, in our experience, it doesn't take very long in some cases to become that person, but it's creating those avenues by which people can come out of formal education, go into their first job, and over a kind of 3-month period become that competent person. And that's true whether they are completing a diploma in plumbing and heating, or whether they're coming out of construction and becoming a domestic energy assessor and actually qualifying rather than the job and building everything.
I think Paul almost cemented that in saying they're looking for basic competencies and skills sometimes rather than the qualifications that they can support and deliver with. I'll come on to you in a moment, Paul. Georgina put a really good question in the chat. It says, what language should we be considering in addition to or instead of retrofit? What should we be saying?
Yeah. It's a great question about branding, Georgina. I think slightly anecdotal, but you might know Generation UK, the charity, has been running a retrofit advisor boot camp, maybe for just over a year now, multiple cohorts all over the country, initially kind of hybrid and kind of online first, that sort of stuff. And they were calling it a retrofit advisor boot camp to begin with. And more recently, they called it a sort of sustainability consultant boot camp or something. So even though everything else under the hood is the same, they found that reframing resulted in a massive uptick in terms of candidate demand. So language really matters when you're selling this, and I think calling something a bit more accessible than retrofit, which is, in some respects kind of an obvious word when you break it down. It's like retro is like going backwards. We know it through retro music, and fit is doing some kind of change, fitting. But I think when you're trying to sell a career to people, actually something that sounds like a bit more progressive might be better fit. So that's my best stab at the answer.
No, and it's brilliant, and it's something that we've grappled with a lot, because our funders and a lot of our stakeholders and deliverers talk retrofit, but actually our consumers and our customers and our talent pipeline don't, and we need to find some happy medium where we all are speaking the same language, and I think that cuts across lots of skills and employment interventions. Absolutely. Paul, you did have your hand up. I don't know if you want to come in.
Yeah, just my point about the skills and the rather than qualifications, and then that's never been easier to achieve now, the way the funding is getting rolled out to the DFE, and it allows us to then intensively prepare whatever group of candidates for a specific role, then they get qualified. And I think that's feedback from across England based on our boot camp so far. And a lot of providers are really struggling to fill these retrofit assessor courses, because they've been take people on with no frame of reference for the sector. A retrofit assessor, they put it in perspective as a sort of architectural technician stroke trainee surveyor job. You're dealing with maybe 7 or 8 trades. And if you don't have a construction background, you're just getting a qualification that's not going to get you anywhere. And to be fair to the DFE, you know, they're already flagging that up, and these providers are having to say they can't fulfil their contract. So it really is a great opportunity to use that report you commissioned for the University of Dundee to get into the, as you're doing, you know, we get into the SME base across the boroughs and just keep chipping away at them and say this work's going on. We've got as much support as you need for you to be able to, you know, be a part of it. So skills first, then qualifications after it. And I say the funding system now looks as if it's in place for that to be achievable, which has got great opportunities for colleges and obviously challenges, I accept that, but that's the way the industry is going. And if South London can lead in that, it's going to be fantastic, you know.
Thank you, Paul, and yeah, thank you, Matt. And I think they're all really valuable comments. And I think, you know, the skills first approach is certainly something that we would want to advocate for, and making sure that we get our employers and our the right skills, and we make sure that the talent pipeline are coming through with the right skills to get the jobs, and particularly not losing that focus on customer service and that almost kind of cross sale and advocacy for I'll call it retrofit or efficient homes building or sustainable planning, whatever we might call it. I think having a debate about the language we use is going to be a good one, and is certainly something for the future. And Joanna, I can see the comments that you've made. You know, efficient homes is something that people relate to. So, you know, how do we start changing up that language a little bit and supporting our training providers and our partners to speak in a slightly different language that makes sense to the people we're trying to attract and engage is going to be really important going forward. I think we're almost at time, so it's an opportunity for me to round up and say thank you very much, Matt, for your insight. As I said, it's always great. It's always great. Someone's not mic'd. Oh, Georgina, yes, sorry.
Sorry, ignore.
Okay, no worries. So, yeah, just wanted to say big thank you. As I say, it's always great to hear insights. It's always great to understand, you know, from different perspectives. So thank you. It's also an opportunity for me, once again, just to say the Retrofit Skills Centre, retrofitskills.org, so our Retrofit Skills Centre online is our one-stop shop where you can find out about all the local skills and training delivery that's happening, including some of the events. So we've got some big events coming up over the next week or so, including Kingston Efficient Home Show. We've got our Careers Transition event next week. We've also got a couple more in our webinar series. So all of that can be found on our events page. And this will be available on our resources page, and we'll transcribe that for people who are able to join. But the whole idea of our website is to really build out and build up the talent pipeline and make sure that we can fulfill the demands, but also ensure our businesses have the competitive edge and can take advantage of the opportunity, the growth opportunity, not just from skills and employment, but economic growth. So we've put a link in the chat to our events page. So if any of you can join, that'd be great. But once again, thanks so much, Matt, for your time. And we really, really appreciate it. We know the amazing work that you're doing in the sector and the innovation that you've driven. And we're really keen to make sure that continues. So thank you ever so much. And thanks to the team, Georgina and Megan, for pulling this together. And we look forward to seeing you at one of our other webinars. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank
yeah,
you.
great to be on.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.